And here we are. Welcome to How to Be a Conscious Parent with Confidence. And that means without self-doubt and second guessing. And my promise for you today is to take away a framework to enable you to go from that self-doubt and second guessing, empowering you to take steps towards becoming that conscious parent with confidence. So if you're here with us today, if you can shut down distractions so you can focus. And I'm curious, what brought you to here today? If you can pop in where you've come in from, and if there's anything specific that you wanted to know today. I'm fairly interactive in the way that I deliver, and if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask, and I will do my best to answer them as we go. So chances are you're here because you found balancing parenting and life in general is running you down. Or maybe you find yourself irritated and yelling at the kids, even though you know that's not what you want for you or them. And if you're like me, you ended up frustrated and disappointed at yourself, which actually drove more of that reactivity. Because if you're like me, you started down this journey of parenting with no real idea other than knowing you wanted to be the best that you could be. And then real life kicks in. And depending on your own upbringing, you know, we get affected by the way we were raised. It's that nature versus nurture. And babies arrive and we get caught in the whirlwind of every day. And that can be particularly challenging, especially if you have a child that's not quite what you're expecting and certainly not where you wanted to be. And perhaps you've read the books and you've watched the parenting sessions. You may have even done a course or two. But somehow, with all the best intentions in the world, you end up overwhelmed and still second guessing. And you want that dream back and don't see how to get there yet. So what if there was an easier way? An easier way to be a great parent and have some level of control over you and your life without being half-assed at both. So who am I and why listen to me? Well, I'm Leanne Wakeling, and some of you already know me from various parenting groups in the positive parenting and conscious parenting space in Facebook. I'm a metadynamics certified coach at the professional master level. And I've probably been parent mentoring a lot of the time since I became a parent, because right from the word go, I've always wanted to empower other parents with their success, even though I may not have always been perfect myself, because I know sometimes we get a little blind to our own thing. I'm a present kind of person. And this is my little entourage, the wolf pack. My 4 now very grown-up peeps who still only have fur babies. So I'm a fur baby grandparent to 5 wonderful puppies. And just like you, I started out being overwhelmed with all the different aspects of our various personalities of our little people. This is my number one son, and that's a pretty good show of the kind of dynamic personality he is. He used to be pretty in your face, 100 miles an hour, poor impulse control, pretty bright, but not always a great decision maker. My number two child, Ms. Bronwyn, who quiet, like many of us, and in fact, what family system psychology shows us is pretty much the opposite of number one, because we're always trying to figure out where we fit in the world. And then we had Mr. Number three, who was my little crooked man, my clinic sister used to call him. He had a little bit of a tough entry. He was my longest delivery, with being in and out of labour on and off over a couple of months before we got into full-fledged, I'm going to be here and no one's changing their mind. And he was born a few days early, as were all of them. And Mr. Neil is also my character. He's the fun at heart guy who, bit of an adventurer, likes to get out and do stuff. And then we have little Miss Tess, who was our surprise edition. And she arrived after a pregnancy where I was actually away a lot of the time because my husband was in the Navy at the time. And we sort of had to do, he was, for any of you who have military backgrounds and partners, he was crash posted to sea, literally Thursday afternoon. They said, can you turn up tomorrow? And he says, oh, is it okay if I do Monday? And then I just found out I was pregnant. And then he was away till 4 weeks before she was born. Unfortunately, he was there for the birth and was away again when she was 6 weeks, well, before she was 6 weeks old. And so parenting for me has been very much a personal growth journey. And if we allow ourselves to lean in with our children, we can learn the parenting journey as we go. Because one of the things that many of us forget is our experience at parenting is as long as our child has been alive. And each of those parenting journeys is different. And each of mine are very different. And we face very different challenges. And each time I've had to learn something else and something new. And so part of it is just being kind to ourselves as we go on this journey. And a lot of our learning comes from childhood. And a lot of our reactivity can be based in how much were we heard in our childhood. And this is not to bag out parents, because our parents were doing the very best they knew how and were capable of. But for a lot of us, if we had a reactive parent or a very authoritarian parent, you know, the ones who kind of, you had to be on awareness, waiting for, okay, what are the rules that we have to live by today? And if we had more permissive parents, it was, well, okay, do they actually know what they're doing, or do I need to take charge of this myself? And this is where we can get caught up based on how we were parented and the style of parenting we want to adopt. We can get trapped between how we were taught, the meanings we created, and what we wanted to deliver and what we wanted to deliver for our children. And so sometimes we don't know how to do this, not because we're stupid, but because we get caught between these worlds of what we want and how to do it. Because really, those three things that all of us want is to know that we are okay. Are we good enough? Are we lovable? And are we loved? And are we safe? Do we belong? And that can be really interesting, because if we've come from a background of with parents that didn't really understand that with all of their best intentions, then we're always doing a little bit of catch up. And it's where we have that negative voice in our head, and where we can get trapped in being critical with our children, if that happens to be our experience, and why we can get reactive. And self-compassion is super important so that we can allow ourselves to breathe and be present to our child without becoming defensive. And this is what's great about this framework, this scaffolding for success that I'm planning to share with you, and that we're going to work through today. And I'll get through as much as I can in this session. And if it's okay, at the end, I'll also share ways of how to get even more learning in this space. Because my mission in life is not merely to survive, it's to thrive. And my passion is to enable, empower parents to be able to do this as well, so that we can be the model of excellence for our children, so that we can live with passion, be compassionate with them, have fun, have humor, and with a bit of style. And the critical alignment model is something that's enabled me to go on that journey myself, which is why I'm pretty passionate about it. And it comes with the strategic elements, the elements that are the overarching, which some of us do really well. We can see the big vision, we can have long-term goals, we get the structure. And other of this, and it's kind of parenting, tends to get caught in the implementation, the doing the do, the getting stuff done, the managing every day. And what happens is that in getting that, sometimes we can get stuck in missing the big picture, or being so focused on this little human being that same version when they're grown up, that we actually miss the opportunity to combine the both to get the best quality outcome for all of us. So environment in metadynamics is that big picture, the mission, the vision, the standards, the values, the rules, the beliefs, and the attitudes. And we're going to be exploring what this looks like and how you can do it for yourself. Then it's the what, it's the structures, it's the systems, the processes, the procedures, checklists, benchmarks, KPIs. And okay, it sounds a bit like business speak, but actually a family is running an organization. Yeah, it's a teeny little one. Yes, we all know each other. And these are the elements that help us run with sustainability, so that we're cooperating together, so that we understand and we can allow for each other and work together as a team. Implementation is doing the do. How are we living those standards? Are we keeping our eye on the prize? Are we working towards the benchmarks? Because it's a journey. It's not a destination. It's something that we're working together on all the time to keep working towards becoming that family, living that life that we really want. It's how our children get to know that it's okay to make mistakes, that it's not about being excellent right now, it's to keep aspiring to be even better. And it's who? It's knowing, it's getting clarity around the people. It's, do we need to support? Who are we interacting with? Who are the stakeholders? Family, coaches, teachers, mentors, tutors, anybody who's part of our success system. They might be part-timers, they might be people that we only see now and again. It's understanding that it's having a team, because none of us do this stuff. We don't create success alone. So how do we do this? Well, step one is getting clear on our why. Because the reality is, without a target, we're sure to hit it. And without a vision, we're really destined to repeat the patterns that we already have and we've already experienced. And as I mentioned earlier, it's family system psychology in action. And it's also for those who are into law of attraction, and I never used to be, but I'm learning more and more that that's just one way of saying what we focus on is what we get. And in order to not focus on that pink elephant, you have to think about the pink elephant. It's when we're driving in a car, and I don't know about you, but did you ever do that driving where you don't want to hit the curb, you don't want to hit the curb, you don't want to hit the curb? Oh dear, we've hit the curb. Because what we focus on is what we get. And if you don't know where you're going, you might not like where you land. And so it's sorting out the priorities. Have clarity around what's important in the long term. And this is what creating that vision gives us, so that you can set the standards and define the values, explore the attitudes for success, because they're all elements that create and enable and empower that mission to happen and the vision to be achieved. And it's who we are becoming. Who do we want to be? It's the what do we do so that we can have what we want? And it's a really simple process. And when we have that clarity around where we're going, it does mean that we can create that anchor point that enables us to really have success. And I know it was something that I never realized was I was always running, never pausing and reflecting, because I was so frightened of making those mistakes that kept on happening, because perhaps I kept on running and never exploring, well, okay, what do I really want? What's happening here? And it's how we create the culture in our family and bring everybody on board. And it doesn't matter whether you've still got little people who really don't have a whole lot to say, and you really are at that high management level of leadership in your family, where you're still gotta be the protector, where you've still got to support them in learning how to become who they are becoming. And that's often one of the biggest things. It's remembering our job isn't to turn them into something that we or the world or somebody else expects them to be. Our job is actually to support them to become themselves. And when we realize and accept and encourage and empower takes an awful lot of freaking pressure off ourselves that enables us to have a little bit more compassion, breathing space, less anxiety, because it's not all about us. It really isn't. We are not responsible for our child's behavior and choices. We are responsible for supporting them in how to make the best quality decisions and appreciating where they are on their development journey. And that takes us to step 2, is the structure. What do we need in order to become that parent who can parent with confidence, knowing that we're not responsible for our child's actions, though we are responsible for supporting them to learn how to do better. And that's not done through telling. And no matter how much we may have been told, if we reflect, how many of us actually did what we were told? To the letter, all the time. It's natural. We want to develop our own personalities. We want to be okay. The only way we can ever know that we're okay within ourselves is through how we discover to trust in ourselves, which we learn through how we're parented. Did our parents tell us what to do, or did our parents support us learn how to be? And it's the same. It's the desire that we want in parenting. For the vast majority of us, we want our kids to be able to do well. In order to do well, they need to be able to have a vision about their own lives. And okay, it might be a little later in life when you start really getting into this, but you can even imagine with your 5-year-old is to say, well, okay, you've had a really tough day. Geez, I'm really sorry you had that really tough day. And I'm wondering, what was it about that was tough? And listen for their thinking. Because we get awfully caught in our own feelings. Totally human. But then we start getting anxious because we're worried we're not doing a good enough job if they're having a problem. We're worried about our mistakes. When we get out of worrying about ourselves, we can start to support them to solve their problems, which is much better than us solving their problems. It's actually a win-win. And so the supports to empower success are processes, checklists, benchmarks. How do we know when we're succeeding? What are the steps in order to create that success? What are some processes that we can follow to actually empower us to have that greater success? So, a system of models. I like this one. You know, outer world says we've got what we don't want. Okay, so what do we do want? Well, we don't want a kid that's always stuffing up and annoying us or breaking down or melting down. But what do we want? We want a kid that's confident and peaceful, or understands and has their own inner peace. And how do we get there? What actions can we take? We can take the actions of collaborating with them, supporting them with solving their problems, and understanding where they are on their development journey. So what are the benchmarks? Well, at different ages, our children are capable of different things. There's this work from Daniel Siegel and Tina Payne Bryson. Daniel is a world-leading child psychiatrist who has been studying neurological developments in the brain of children and humans, younger humans, for 40 plus years. And Tina Payne Bryson is a parent educator, and she's a counselor who works. And together, they've put this great book called The Whole Brain Child, which is covering the first 10 years of development in our child neurologically. Because did you know that a child doesn't have a whole brain until they're 10? And that doesn't even mean that they are capable of doing everything, because full adult brain, all of the pieces don't mature until between the ages of 24 to 28 in the current world environment. We're maturing emotionally a little later, even though we're maturing physically a little earlier. And so we're having a lot of these tensions. And so when we understand the benchmarks of expectations, it actually becomes a whole lot easier to lose the anxiety, or certainly reduce it, and be aware that, and okay, this is speaking about your, in inverted commas, average children, because there'll always be kids that are outside these benchmarks. Now let's get clear. Benchmarks are about averages. So some of us will have children who perform ahead of average in some areas, some of us a little behind in some areas, some who meet average in areas and not in others, some who are smarter, some who start walking early, some who start talking early. And it's a general thing. And it's also appreciating that little girls and little boys, sorry, but they are in fact different. And their brain is wired differently. And all our brains are wired to our individual wavelength. And so we all need to allow for and understand and listen to our child, because their thinking is what's creating their reality, which is then turning into their behavior. And us telling them how to do differently doesn't always empower them in order to be able to repeat that. And so you worry that you're not doing the right thing. And really, anxiety is when you're trying to control things that you have no control over. I know. Who would have thought? The wonderful thing is, it means that anxiety is resolvable, at least become manageable, by leaning into the power of now, being able to accept the things that you cannot change the things that you can, and really the only thing that you have control over is you, because in case you didn't hear me before, you are not responsible for your child's behavior. They made that choice. Okay, they may be able to do better. That doesn't mean that you're responsible. And that was a big lesson for me, because a lot of my early life reactivity as a parent was around having a child that was a little outside the lines. Well, actually a lot outside the lines, never listening, poor impulse control, jumping around, the looks that I would get, because why can't you manage your child? Well, I don't know about you, but it's kind of like trying to hold jelly. It's just keeps slipping through your fingers. And so I had to learn how to be the best mother for him and stop worrying about what other people think. And that's a way that I certainly reduced my mother anxiety and started to be able to effectively advocate for him and what he needed to become the best version of himself. And you can feel overwhelming, and it can feel like it's never going to end. It's appreciating that it is a long journey, but it doesn't have to be hard. We actually get to control how hard we make it. And I know for some of us, you think, oh, yeah, but you don't know. Well, yeah, but is leaving the power of your experience outside of you. And I know, used to be me. And I would struggle with feeling this level of responsibility for why can't I do better? Why is this? Why is that? And it's really uncomfortable to be uncomfortable and to feel like you're not doing the best that you can do because you're looking for evidence that doesn't actually belong to you. You're looking to control something that's not yours. And so it's then being able to come in and reflect. And okay, some of those beliefs were created by my 5-year-old self. And just like you and your children, that 5-year-old self, that had no logical reasoning, but it became the voice in our head. It became our inner critic. It became it's our ego. It's our subconscious. Its job is to keep us safe. And so we have all of these fears, and then we try and control them, which drives our anxiety or our reactivity or whatever version that kind of worry turns up for you. I happen to be minefield. I'm the only minefield in my family because, well, no, the boys are a little bit more minefield than the girls, but they're all less minefield than me because I was the biggest minefield. They were the ones that were treading on eggshells around me and never knowing. And I've had to learn that actually I have power over that. And that was a pretty amazing insight. But it took a little while to get comfortable with. So step 3 is the implementation, is how do we do this? Because it's what are the actions, and it's going back. Who do we want to be? Allowing ourselves to understand we might not be there yet, which actually becomes a model of excellence for our children because they learn that it's okay to make mistakes. What do we need to do? One of the biggest things is the power of the pause. In those moments, pause. Unless there is a life-threatening incident happening in that moment, and for some of us, especially those of us with those children who are out there on the edge or who are little and still navigating their way, who have no common sense, who have no reasoning skills, who, you know, your 3-year-old might be hitting his 1-year-old brother, or your 5-year-old might be about to climb over the fence that you can see is going to fall down. And yes, you do have to, and it's not in that moment that's the problem. Because you might shout, you might swear, you might do something that your best self would otherwise prefer not to do. And that's okay. It's how do you repair that relationship? How do you reconnect? How do you enable your child to understand what's happening without a big lecture, without scaring them? Because I only in reflection realized how scary I must have been for my children at times. Because in the end, I know that what the intention was. I know and understood. But our little kids don't understand that yet because they're totally self-absorbed, and that's why it's important to create that vision so that you can be on that mission and journey to the goal of raising that child so that you can develop the strategy that you're going to implement for the long-term success. Because when we focus only on the short term, we fix them in a moment. But if we haven't aligned to the long-term goal as well, that problem will keep coming up and will keep coming up because all we've done is we put the Band-Aid on it instead of fixing the injury, fixing that broken fence that fell down and they got hurt. It's doing that strategic work. So it's not either or, it's both together. And that's what makes it, to me, and maybe I just get too excited about this stuff, but to me, it's when I make those mistakes, I realize, okay, what happened? Let's reflect. Where am I going? Is this helping me? This particular action was okay in the moment, but it's not actually going to solve the long-term problem. How can I also achieve the long term? It allows us to be gentler. And step 4 is, who are the people? And there's the stakeholders in our life. And okay, business speak again, because this works really well in business, whether you're just starting out. But in reality, a family is an organization, just like a business is an organization, just like corporation is an organization. We still have pieces. We still have the inside circle. We have the outside circle. We have the occasionals in our network. And it's, working out how do they fit into our long-term plan? How much do we need to invite them in? How much do they need to be consulted in order to create our success? And there is a truism. It takes a village to raise a child, because no success is ever achieved alone. And so it's when we have those difficulties is remembering, who are our village? Who are the stakeholders? Where can we go? And mentoring, having a mentor, whether that be, for some of it, it is a parent, it is our parent. But for lots of us, if we're wanting to parent differently to the way we were raised, we do need a mentor. Because we can read all the books until the cows come home. But if the material in the book is not working for us, how do we fix that? We are our own limitation. And it's one of the things I had to learn. I did my first parenting course when my son was about 7 or 8, because I had 2 other children and we're trying to manage everything. And my husband was deployed. And doing things alone was like crazy pants. And so getting a bit of support, because my husband's pretty good at giving me the alternate version. And I'm pretty fortunate that he's the grounded, my tether to the earth in those days. But now I can do this stuff a whole lot better myself. And it's what I know is necessary in order to make those better choices, in order to empower that better quality life that we want. And it's understanding you're prepared to do differently. Because the thinking that created the problem can't solve it. And that's a quote from Einstein. Because we have to think differently. We have to learn to move through that thinking in order to problem solve. It's the nature of innovation, is that you have to think outside of the box. You have to get past, this is the way we've always done it. Because if you do things the way you've always done it, you'll keep getting what you've always got. And you can do this slowly on your own. You can read all the books. Gosh, these are 5 of my favorites for early in the parenting journey. I recommend them all the time. But if your child doesn't match to exactly what the author was describing, where are you then? And I see it a lot, is, yeah, this is really helpful. And if your child doesn't match that, or you're not a match for that style, what happens then? And I've come across a few parents but I've read that and my kid just doesn't match. Well, if I'd have read this at the time when I had young children, I don't know that I necessarily would have got 100% either. And that's why we can speed things up by doing this together. Because, yeah, you can learn by reading all the books. But guess what? I've already done it for you. And one of my zones of genius happens to be able to distill it all together and blend it with the knowledge and the expertise of these giants in child rearing and child psychology. And it's also then being able to work with you with the particular challenges that you're experiencing. Because the reality is, we're not one size fits all. And those books will generally help the one size fits all kid. But for those of us who have those kids who draw outside the lines, who live outside the lines, who don't quite meet expectations, who we get frustrated with, they get frustrated, and we're all not enjoying this at all. But stop. It's not for everyone. And I've met people that you're attached to the old way. It's actually scary to move away from what's familiar to us, even if it's not working. Most of us are inclined to keeping the certainty of what we already know. Number of parents that I see that say, okay, I'm really into this positive parenting stuff, but we've been trying it and it's just not working. My husband or my wife is just, why are we wasting so much time? This is exhausting. But it's because they want to use this new system with the old thinking, and it just isn't a match. And you've got to have patience, because if you want to do things your way and you're not prepared to accept feedback, and I may perhaps have occasionally been known to be that kind of person in the past, if you're resistant like that, it's keep working on those books, keep trying those things. And if you expect instant success without effort, it's just not real as anything. There's a reason that mastery is defined as 10,000 hours. 10,000 hours of effort. Because it's about continuous and never-ending improvement. It's about knowing that when we fall down, it's okay to get up. It's the toddler model of excellence. We may not enjoy lots of things that they do, but you know what? They're tenacious at keep trying. And that's what we got to in the beginning. We've got to be like that toddler to keep on getting up when we fall over. That's how we build our resilience. That's how we empower them to build theirs. So let's work together. You know, I work with small groups. We can do Zoom. We can work one-to-one. We can work in a small group. You always get access to me because you don't just need a course. Or if you do just want a course, go for it. But for most of us, we want to get there easy, not hard. And the way to get there easy is to go with a guide. And that's what I do. I work with couples over Zoom. I work one-to-one. I'm launching a program, and I've worked with groups before. And it's going on a journey together, knowing you're not alone. But the thing is, you get to decide always, because this is your journey about what you want. So let's explore where you're at. Book a discovery session. Send me a PM or an email to leanne@leannegwakeling.com.au, and I'll send you an Acuity link, and we can get on together and just work out. The worst it's going to cost you is a little bit of time, and you'll walk away with understanding what your next steps could be, what that could look like, where the actions are and the opportunities to start working towards that dream of that ideal family that's been there in your mind and your desires when you're not caught in the overwhelm and the whirlwind of every day. And if you have any questions, please send them through. I look forward to being able to support you and identifying where the opportunities are in your life for what you want to achieve. Thank you so much for your time. I'm so grateful for you having spent this time with me. And you can always come find me in the Conscious and Intentional Parenting Tribe or at Leanne G. Wakeling on Facebook, my Facebook page, and at leannegwakeling.com.au, where you can find more resources, my blog, other tips, and opportunities. Again, very much grateful for your time and attention. Looking forward to supporting you on your journey.